Have you ever been called antisocial just because you love staying home? Have you ever felt guilty for choosing silence over noise, peace over people? What if I told you? There's a reason your soul craves that quiet. What if staying home isn't isolation at all, but healing? Because there's a certain kind of quiet that only exists when you're home. Not the quiet of boredom, not the kind that feels empty, but the quiet that feels like safety. It's that feeling when you hear the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft click of a clock, and realize that for once, nobody needs you to be anywhere else. It's not loneliness. It's peace. Most people don't understand that. They'll look at someone who loves staying home and assume they're antisocial, withdrawn, maybe even afraid of the world. But for some people, home isn't a retreat from life. It's the one place where they can actually breathe. Because out there, in the noise of constant comparison, pressure, and performance, they lose themselves. At home, they find who they are again. Maybe it started when they were younger. The classroom, the bus, the crowd, places filled with noise and chaos. For some, those spaces felt like survival tests. You had to speak louder to be heard, pretend more to be accepted, and smile wider to seem okay. So they built an inner world instead, a world that was softer, slower, more forgiving. That's where home became more than a place. It became a sanctuary. Psychologists say that people who love being at home often have high sensitivity to external stimuli. Their brains process the world more intensely. Bright lights, loud sounds, too much conversation. It can feel like a flood. So the quiet of home isn't avoidance. It's balance. It's the nervous system saying, "Here, I can rest." But let's be honest. It's not just about overstimulation. There's something deeper, something almost spiritual about it. Home is the only place where we get to take off the mask, the social version of us, the one that smiles on command, that knows what to say, when to laugh, how to fit in. That version dissolves when the door closes behind us. And what's left? The raw, unfiltered version, the one that doesn't need to impress anyone, the one that just exists. It's strange, isn't it? How a person can be surrounded by people all day and still feel unseen. But the moment they're home, sitting by a window with a cup of tea, they finally feel visible. To themselves. That's the quiet magic of solitude. It's not isolation. It's intimacy with your own soul. We often romanticize extroversion in our culture. We celebrate those who are constantly busy, constantly out there, doing, posting, performing. We treat silence like it's suspicious and stillness like it's laziness. But there's a quiet power in people who know how to be alone without feeling lonely. Because they've learned that fulfillment isn't always found in noise. Sometimes it's found in the pauses. There's an old saying, if you don't go within, you go without. For people who love staying home, going within isn't avoidance. It's alignment. It's how they process emotion, recover from overstimulation, and reconnect with what's real. Think about it. When you're constantly surrounded by people, your identity starts to fragment. You become a version of yourself for each audience. But when you're home, you're the only audience that matters. Of course, there's a fine line between solitude and withdrawal. Even the most introverted souls need connection. But here's the paradox. People who love staying home often have deeper relationships, not shallower ones. Because they don't waste energy on superficial connections. They crave the kind of bond where silence feels comfortable, where you can sit with someone for hours and not need to fill the air with words. It's presence, not performance. When psychologists study solitude, they find something fascinating. People who spend more intentional time alone tend to score higher on creativity and emotional intelligence. Not because they're smarter, but because they're reflective. They process their feelings instead of drowning in them. They observe their own thoughts instead of running from them. In that stillness, ideas form, clarity emerges, and emotional wounds quietly begin to heal. Think about your biggest realizations. They probably didn't come at a party or in a noisy cafe. They came in the shower, late at night, or during a quiet walk when no one else was around. That's the hidden power of staying home. It gives your mind the silence it needs to speak clearly. But here's what's ironic. Many people who love staying home carry a secret guilt about it. They feel like they're missing out, like life is happening somewhere else. Social media makes it worse. Endless photos of parties and trips make homebodies feel like they're doing something wrong. But the truth is everyone's chasing peace. And for some people, peace just looks like staying home. There's something deeply human about needing a place to retreat, to pause, to reset. In ancient times, monks went to mountains and caves to meditate. Today, we do it in bedrooms, reading corners, or tiny apartments filled with plants and music. It's the same impulse, the need to return to stillness after chaos. The home is just the modern temple, and here's the psychology behind it. When you're at home, you're in what scientists call a low-threat environment. Your body stops producing as much cortisol, the stress hormone, because there's no need to defend or perform. That's why your thoughts feel clearer at home. That's why you suddenly get emotional when you're alone. Your guard drops, and all the feelings you've been holding back finally rise to the surface. It's healing disguised as quiet, but not everyone understands this. Sometimes people will say, "You need to get out more." What they don't realize is that staying home doesn't mean doing nothing. Some of the most meaningful growth happens there. Reading, reflecting, journaling, dreaming. These are quiet revolutions happening behind closed doors. And the people who love staying home aren't avoiding the world. They're preparing for it. They're recharging, rebuilding, re-entering. And when they step out, they bring calm instead of chaos. There's a psychological comfort in routine. The brain loves predictability. It reduces anxiety. When you know where everything is, when the space feels familiar, your mind relaxes. For someone who loves staying home, this predictability becomes sacred. It's not monotony, it's emotional regulation. Every object, every ritual, from lighting a candle to making the same morning coffee, becomes a way of telling the nervous system, "You're safe now." Yet in a world obsessed with productivity, that kind of stillness feels rebellious. We're taught that to be valuable, we must always be visible, always doing, always achieving. But people who love staying home quietly challenge that idea. They prove that meaning doesn't always come from motion. Sometimes it comes from stillness, from being rooted enough to notice the rain tapping against the window, to think deeply about who you're becoming. Maybe that's why homebodies often have a rich inner world. When you spend enough time in solitude, imagination starts to bloom. You begin to see connections others miss. You notice the poetry in ordinary things, the way sunlight hits a wall, the dust dancing in air, the faint laughter through thin walls. There's beauty there, quiet but undeniable. It's a slower kind of happiness, one that doesn't need to be captured or shared. Some people will never understand that kind of contentment. To them, silence feels heavy, and solitude feels like punishment. But for those who love being home, silence is not emptiness. It's music. It's the sound of finally being enough. So if you're someone who finds peace in the quiet, don't apologize for it. You're not missing life. You're meeting it more deeply. Because when the world feels loud and uncertain, the quiet ones are often the ones who've already found what everyone else is still searching for: a home inside themselves.